Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time around, we're checking out a gameplay mod by the name of Spaghetti Weapons, a gameplay mod that is certainly a bit further along the shitpost spectrum than most, and why yes, that is indeed a pistol that shoots meatballs, which doesn't simply kill enemies, but actually transforms them into a plate of spaghetti and meatballs, which can then be consumed to not just replenish your ammunition, but also your health. But as a weapon, it kinda sucks. That's why the pan is my weapon of choice when it comes to this first level of Vanguard, because oh boy does it smack the shit out of everything when you've got a berserk pack. Every hit is a crit. And that noise, oh that sonorous donk, that takes me back. Takes me back to the good old days of TF2. Anyone fancy some cheese balls? Got a whole jar full of them here. You sure I can't persuade you? Here, try. Turns out the cheesy aura of this thing is so strong that the ult allows you to set it up as a shielded turret. You know, just in case you fancy force-feeding a whole horde of demons cheese balls en masse. I mean, why wouldn't you? Have to admit though, the jar of cheese balls quite frankly pales in comparison next to the likes of the slot gun. A shotgun powered by money that doesn't fire when you pull the trigger, but instead spins the reels. If you get a line, you'll get an interesting effect. If you don't, you'll just get a bog standard shotgun blast. But the lines that you can acquire here are quite varied indeed. Dollar signs, for example, can spit out extra ammunition, usually in the form of coin, but among other things, you'll sometimes get a platter of meatballs. Rolling a line of shields will grant you a selection of armor drops, but if you need something a little bit more offensively styled, a line of bombs will turn your shotgun into a triple rocket launcher. In terms of other effects you can expect to encounter on a reasonably frequent basis, you'll have the likes of 3 rabbits on a line, which will give you a significant speed increase. You'll be able to get 3 snowflakes on a line, which will grant you freezing projectiles. And if you get 3 cherries, something that you may have spotted earlier in the footage here, you'll be granted a big, beefy shotgun blast. In terms of less frequent rolls to watch out for, the Skull and Crossbones is certainly an omen, because that one, rather than offering anything useful, actively just damages you. But in terms of the most intriguing of those rarer rolls, we have the 3 emeralds. Not only can these grant you access to more specialized item drops, such as backpacks full of pasta, which can increase your ammo capacity, berserk packs, or cloak potions, which do exactly what they say on the jar, but also grant you access to weaponry. Weaponry that typically can't be attained in the wild. Examples include the Kunai with chain. This is a weapon that allows you to grapple enemies from a fair distance away, pull them towards you, and then deliver quite a hefty punch. Somewhat pleasingly, if you've got the right kind of enemy on the chain, said punch can also turn that enemy into a big old cloud of giblets. By far the most interesting weapon that can be spat out by the slot gun in my opinion though, is the Nintendo controller. Take a guess at what it does. If you guessed turns fights into a turn-based RPG encounter, then wow, well done. This can be used on pretty much any standard Doom enemy and grants you access to a whole subset of options. You've got a slashing attack, which can build mana as a side effect. You can guard, which reduces incoming damage and again builds mana. And said mana can then be spent on a menu of spells. You got a meatball blast, you've got healing ravioli, you've got a marinara molotov, and then at the top, the most expensive option, friendship spaghetti. As you may correctly surmise, that spell does indeed recruit whatever monster you're fighting to your side, but if you try and use it right off the bat, you'll find it's hideously expensive mana-wise. It does reduce in price as you whittle an enemy down, but the trade-off to that is that by the time you get to the point where you can actively recruit said enemy, the health is so low that they're practically worthless in a fight. So I'd say, yes, save that mana, and potentially use it on something a little bit more useful, like, I guess, casting more meatballs. As for the loot that you can attain for defeating enemies in this mode, it seems for the most part to be pretty standard stuff in my experience. I was trying to figure out whether it would grant you access to a even deeper subset of specialized items, but that actually turned out to be quite difficult to make happen on anything resembling a regular basis. But for the sake of reference, other items that have the potential to turn up through one method or another include invincibility drink, a deployable regeneration field, a popsicle stick that can stop time, or as we call it in the UK, an ice lolly. but the only confirmation I could get that the RPG mode does indeed grant unique loot was the fact that after defeating a Revenant, it dropped a banhammer. Pity I died immediately, but that certainly didn't stop me from wielding it later on. I think it's worth mentioning at this point, however, just how ridiculous this chain of progression actually is. I've obtained a weapon that required me to win a random roll in a minigame, which itself is the product of a random roll off of the slot gun. We got multiple layers here, chaps. This one goes deep. Gotta say, the slot gun and all of the myriad possibilities it holds is a tough act to follow, but the deck of cards is still pretty interesting in its own right. Depending on what hand you draw, you'll get a variety of effects. You can have poison cards, vampire cards, piercing, homing, card spam, and if you're exceedingly lucky and pull off a royal flush, it flat out kills absolutely everything on the level. Well, minus the stuff that hasn't spawned yet, but still, a surprising effect nonetheless. So what else have we got here? Oh yeah, a mortar on a stick. Inflicts surprisingly less self-damage than I would have imagined. If you enjoy stabbing enemies to death, but also require some detached precision, the Sculpt tactical knife is going to be right up your alley. Sculpt hits get crits. It's a knife with a scope on it. What more can I say? Billy Bomb is a remote control bomb. Throw it, and enemies are suddenly powerless to attack you. Seriously, they just lose all interest. They can't do jack shit. And all you need to do then is maneuver it ever so slowly into the general vicinity before the timer hits 0, and they will go big bada boom. If you're in a rush, you can trigger it early. Either way, reasonably effective. Those of a more culinary persuasion can enjoy the unadulterated power of a can of Chef Boyardee spaghetti and meatballs. Chuck this sucker into the middle of a fray. It will apply vigorous suction, sealing demons tight within its aluminium sarcophagus, where they are then purified and transformed into a tasty meal for the entire family. But guess what? We're not done. Oh boy, we are not done, because this mod sees the return of a bona fide legend. This mod lets you wield the Astolfo plushie. Granted, first time round I didn't recognize its true significance, but now I have learned. Now I am privy to the true might of this particular ancient relic. Not only will it send enemies to the great beyond with a smile on their face, it will also make them question their sexual preferences. And as long as you supply the Bepis, you can throw as many of these suckers as your heart desires. Fun fact, throw enough of them and it's likely that you'll see a Marissa plushie turn up in the crowd, making you into a veritable Pied Piper of unparalleled power. But how about we go one further than that? Because there's one slot gun effect that I haven't mentioned yet. Get 3 question marks in a row, and, well, now you're an Astolfo plushie, able to pull off its signature attack. Sadly, when I had a check of the third-person chase cam, it did not, in fact, reveal my current form, which is a crying shame, but nonetheless, it is a very interesting experience. No doubt, very confusing for all involved. So there you go, spaghetti weapons. In my opinion, a shining example of how to put out a really entertaining and genuinely interesting shitpost mod. I mean, more often than not, when it comes to this style of mod, it's a bit of a crapshoot in terms of what you actually get out of them, but in my experience, I find they're often at their best when used as a testing ground for interesting, strange, and offbeat ideas. I mean, let's face it, the slot gun here, you could conceivably structure an entire gameplay mod around the results of that one weapon alone. I think something that greatly contributed to my enjoyment of that particular weapon was the fact that the alt fire, while costing more money and taking longer to spin, gives you a guaranteed line every time. So if you did felt the urge to experiment and just see as much as you could see, you can go nuts, you can do so. And I believe a similar kind of concession is made for the deck of cards. You can spend a bit more money on the alt fire and you'll always get an interesting effect rather than just a base high card throw. Certainly doesn't hurt that the other weapons are a heck of a lot of fun to use too. In any case, if you find that this video has given you a sudden hankering for the sweet, sweet taste of spaghetti and you're wondering where you can get your next fix, you'll find the link, as usual, in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.